Okay, we're going to take that chassis that we had earlier and we're going to add an arm to the top of it. So I'm going to show you some of the things that you need. You can start grabbing those pieces, but what I first did is I took off the brain. So just kind of unplug that whole thing because we're going to modify the chassis just a little bit to fit this on there. You're going to need two 1x12s. So don't count the holes, count the grid spaces because there's an extra hole in the middle on the even number bars. So we need two 1x12s, two 1x10s, two 30-degree angle pieces. I think that's what they're called, but basically it's 30-degree rise on these. There's some 45s and there's 60s, which are a little bit higher. This is the lowest of the bunch, I believe. So you need those. You need two of these standoffs. I'm not quite sure the size technically on them, but they're like 4.5 on the standoff, or 4s, 1, 2, 3, 4, like, I don't know, they're kind of like 4.5-ish, maybe 4s. So you need two of those. You need 7 of these angle connectors, 2 of these, the 3-hole. You need 2, they have a single hole and 2 pins. You need 2 of those, and then you need 2 of these with the double pin, double hole. So 7 of the 5s, 2 of the 3s, 2 of those, and 2 of those. For other pieces, you need 5 2x16s, 1 2x8, and 2 2x10s. You need 2 large L's, and then you need a bunch of shaft collars and a couple of these double connectors here, and then a couple spacers, the thicker of the 2 spacers. You're going to need 3 axles, and one of them, the length is critical, the other 2 not so much, but this one is the critical one. That one has to be the size that's just a little bit longer than that standoff. So if you take your standoff, it should be like 1, grid space bigger. So that's a standard size that comes in the pack. And then you need another one at least that size or longer. So that's this one, and then you can have a shorter one that's like this. A bunch of pins. You're going to need 2 of the 12-tooth gears, and 2 of the 60-tooth gears, and I think that's it. And then a couple motors that we'll have hooked up. So this is what we're going to be building, and then we're going to attach this to our chassis. So I'm going to walk you through that. So the first step is to take all 7 of these and just put studs on 4 of the holes. So you're just going to take your pins and put them in, so you can basically divvy that up to students and say, here you go, put 4 pins in these. But do that for all 7. And then you're going to put, now I've only done 2, so yours are going to have 4 on each of these, but then you're going to put 2 of them up against the back, so right in the middle of the back bar here. And then on your front bar, you're going to put 2 up here in the front, and you might have to move a motor or take a motor out to get that in there, but it shouldn't be that difficult for you. So that's step 1. Step 2 is to put this cross support in here. So we need some additional bracing for the floor. We're going to add a floor to this, and then we want to brace that. So this is in there by these pieces. So you're going to need 2 of these and put pins just in the 2 holes closest to the edge. And then you're going to be using your 2x8 in this position here. So lock those 2 sides in first, and then you can click that bar in, and then you're going to put 1 more of these right in the middle of that. So if you're looking at hole spacing, if you look at our video where we put this standoff, it's basically 2 sets of 2, like the double pin holes, because that's on the single pin. So you're 2 back from there, or if you count from the back of your chassis and you work your way up, so you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's in the 7th like set right there. That's not super critical where it's at. It's just where I placed it on mine. And then you're going to take 2 of your 16 bars and you're going to place them on the top here. So you're going to lock that in. And another one. You're this in. Okay, so that builds a platform so that we can actually build off of for our arm. So that's step one. Okay, step two, we're gonna build the pillars for our arm support. So we're basically gonna be building this, and that's gonna lock into our base for our arm. So to do that, we're gonna take a 2x10, and we're gonna take one of our 5 hole right angle pieces. We're gonna put that right in the bottom of that. And then we're gonna basically make a mirror image of this one. So it's gonna look like this. So the black piece is gonna be to the inside. And then we're gonna take a motor, and our motor is gonna be with the plug up, and we're gonna put that in the third set of holes. So 1, 2, and then the third set. You can put a bunch of studs in these. When I'm just prototyping, I usually just put 4 in, but you can go ahead and stud these out. And then you're just gonna push that onto there. And again, you're gonna have 2 sets. They should just look mirror images. So if you flip it over, so you can basically make the same thing, and then there's your mirror. Okay, we're gonna take those 2 and set them into the base here. Again, I just went to the second hole back. So there's my first hole, and then second hole back is where those go. We are gonna be taking one side off and putting it back on when we add the gears into this, because one of our axles goes in between these 2. This is gonna be a motor lift group. So we're having 2 motors drive the same axles so it can lift itself off the ground and hang on a bar. Okay, this is the first axle. This is the one that's the critical dimension. This is the one that is gonna be between both motors. So if you look at your standoff, this one should extend a little bit beyond the standoff in each direction. Basically one, like at this where your sidewall, it should extend beyond the sidewall into the motor on both sides. That's gonna be attached there. It's got a protrusion that sticks out so it can go into the motor and actually spin. So this is gonna be spacer, and then gear, shaft collar, gear, spacer. So you're gonna put these little spacers on each end. And that's what it looks like completed. Okay, to add the axle into the motor, so what you're gonna do is you're gonna take off one of the walls. I just lost a spacer. Pick that back up. Try and do this one-handed. You're gonna insert this into the opening for the motor, and you're gonna have to rotate until it slides into that position. So it should slide into the motor. And then this one's the tricky one. So when you put this back together, you're gonna have to rotate this gear so that it lines up with the motor on the other side as well. So you'll feel it lock in and kind of slide in when these 2 rails are vertical. If they're sitting out like this, like if they're angled out, it's not in. So rotate the motor until you get them to line up into there. So this is currently not in there. You can see that it's not vertical. So you just take the gear and rotate it, and you should be able to rotate it about 90 degrees, and it should then insert in there so that those 2 now can become vertical. And because of the orientation of this down here, it's making it so it wants to pop outward. So this is where we put standoffs to hold these 2 pieces together. So our 2 standoffs that we have here are gonna go in this space right here under the motor. So this hole and this hole. So I'm gonna put them in there. Oh, by the way, you can't put, or you could put them here and here because you might have pins in those 2 positions. So that's fine, we can put them here and here. Basically anywhere to connect to the other side. Okay, now that you're all together here, you can see that those standoffs are in. You can see that now those 2 vertical rails are parallel to each other. They're no longer sticking out. You can see that my spacing is good. You might have to adjust these a little bit, but I want basically my spacer and gear to be pushed all the way up against that side. There shouldn't be any room in the middle, and it shouldn't be able to move really back and forth very much. So that's that step. Okay, now we're gonna build 2 arms. Again, we're gonna build them as mirror images of each other. So usually I build them together so I can see that they're mirror images. I'm gonna assemble the bottom one, but here's the top is basically the mirror image. So to set it up, I have a 2x16, and then I put 4 pins here. I've got a 60-tooth gear, and the pins are gonna go in, not on the outside holes, those are too far apart, so you have to rotate it so that they go on like these diagonal holes to the center axle with the square hole in it. So this is gonna go in these, and we're just gonna lock that in. And then let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 spots over. I'm gonna put 2 pins, and then I'm gonna put my large L in that opening. So you should have a mirror image, and you set these up like this. They're now mirrors of each other right there. So this is actually gonna be the right one. Is gonna be on this side with the gear to the outside. And then this is gonna be the left one over here. Again, gear to the outside. All right, time to make the second axle. We're gonna take the longest one that we have. Again, it could be the same size as the one above it. That will work. I just picked a little bit longer one. You're gonna put 2 shaft collars in the middle of that. And then you're going to take that and you're going to put these 2 arms up against those shaft collars. So it looks like this. Make sure that the arms are kind of aligned to each other. They could be 90 degrees off from each other, but don't do that. Make them so that they're aligned just like this. And then you're going to want to put a spacer on each side. So the spacer is so that we maintain the same spacing that is in the lower arm. So this one's gonna sit right above it, and we want a spacer, gear, shaft collar. So we're doing the same setup here, spacer, gear, shaft collar, when we put this on. So then our next step is to move and put this arm into the opening. So I'm basically setting it here, and it's gonna go in the second opening down in the middle. So it's gonna go in to that hole right there. Now again, another tricky part, because we're gonna have to kind of move this out. So we're gonna disconnect all of that, put this arm in, and then reconnect it. Okay, so again, that's a little tricky. You're gonna have to spread these out, and then in the process, you're gonna disconnect these and this gear most likely. But then put that axle in and then reconnect it back together. And now this should be kind of loose and floppy in here. This one down here is, the lower one is tight and in the correct position. Now all you're gonna do is you're gonna spread these shaft collars out to get this spacer to ride up against this wall, and then the shaft collar holds everything together. So it's just a matter of just kind of pressing that arm. It's gonna lock into the lower gear, so you can kind of click, hear that click into that space. I'm gonna take this side and do the same thing. I'm basically just spreading these arms out with the shaft collars in the middle. So now you can see that the gears are lined up. And again, if you need to, squeeze it a little together so that that gear is right above that one. Your spacers are there, shaft collars pushing up against it. And now you should have an arm that rotates up and down with the motors. Okay, now we're gonna build this arm unit that's gonna attach to the end of this. So let's kind of go through that process. First thing is this upper section that's gonna attach to this. So what we need on this one is we need our 30-degree angle pieces. We need 2 of these, and then we need 2 triple pins. So the triple pins are the pins that have a single and a double. And we need 2 sets of those, so we need 4 total for our triple pins. Attach the single side of the triple pin to each side of those gray pin connector pieces. Now insert those into the 30-degree angle pieces, and then put the other side into there. Okay, set that piece aside, grab your 2 1x12s, grab your 2 2 holes and 2 pins, and then put blue pins on those. And then you're gonna need 2 quad pins. So they've got the double pin on each side. Your quad pins are gonna go in the last 2 holes. and then you're going to have a single pin in the top hole, and then push all those in. So again, push those double pins in, and then you're going to connect that to a second one. Snap all those together. So now you have that. And now for the bottom piece, this holds the balls in place. So when you've got them trapped in here, this will hold it in position. So actually I kind of messed that up. These should now have blue pins in them. And with the magic of editing, mine are gone, but yours is going to take a second. So pause the video and take your blue pins out of yours. All right, once you're done, now we're going to put these back. We're going to put these onto here. So make sure that that the flat side is going to go into the blues there, and the pins are going to be pointing away from you. Okay, so it looks like this. And then now we're going to try to center this as best we can. Because it's an even number bar, there's no real way to center that. So it doesn't really make a difference if it's off by 1. So we're just going to press that into the holes. And there we go. So one side is going to be one longer than the other, but again, it'll be fine. So now we have kind of our pusher and our, that stops the items from coming out. And it's a one-way valve, so you can kind of push them this way, but then it's going to hang back down to collect. And now we're going to connect these two pieces. So if you bring that arm about to there, so here's my finished version. So you can see it's just a little bit above it, but you're going to now put an axle through those, and then you're going to put two standoffs, or I'm sorry, not standoffs, shaft collars on the ends to hold that in place. So this should be able to freely swing, but then stop as it hits that stop there, so it can't go past vertical. So it can push up and then drop back down on its own weight. So go ahead and do that. Insert the axle through there and put two shaft collars on the ends. Okay, now you're ready to attach your arm, your stopper to your arm. So we're gonna put this right in this position right there. So you can just spread these out a little bit. And usually with two hands, this goes a little easier. You're gonna put, make sure that that is in this orientation. So the front of the robot to these angle outward like that, and snap that in. Okay, now you have an arm that raises up and it can close down. And now you've got a nice little area for the balls to be. And then you also now have a hook so that you can low hang. So when this rotates over, you're actually gonna grab the pipe, and then you're gonna keep lifting, and you will lift yourself off the ground and hang off that bar. So that's what that's used for. Yeah, that looks pretty good on this. So there is a little bit of an issue, like that these aren't perfectly parallel. It's not a big deal, it'll be fine. There's not really any pin that works great in this space right here, and allows you to double connect those. So it's kind of a workaround. It'll do fine, it doesn't break. Sometimes when you put, things that aren't parallel, they have a tendency to break and pop these snaps off, but this isn't really load bearing, except for about right here. So if I was pulling or tugging on this section, I'd worry about it, but I'm not, so it'll be fine. The next thing that we have to do is remount our chassis. So now we've got a lot of weight that actually tips the robot forward. So we're gonna remount our brain to the chassis, and we're gonna kind of set it to the back to move our center of gravity backward a little bit. So we're gonna attach it back here. And then once we attach our interface, we're gonna plug in our wires, And then we're gonna have a couple supports. So typically when you have something like this, that's gonna, you're gonna pull and tug on this a little bit, you don't want that to be floppy this way. So we're gonna add a couple angle supports to provide some stability to this. So I'll talk about spacing and things once I get it all back assembled, like where you need to replug these back into the side rails here and how these attachments go. So give me just a minute. I'm gonna put mine together and then I'll come back. Okay, these are your last two pieces. They're gonna be supports. So these are 1x10s with a pin on one side, and then you're gonna put the double kind of right angle pin, or the single right angle pin down here. And then you're gonna make a mirror image of this, which basically if you just turn it over and rotate this clip, it's a mirror image. So you don't really have to do a whole lot on that. To remount the brain, the easiest way I found is to actually rotate your robot on its side and then clip those legs in. And again, the leg holes are gonna be in these two, which are right behind your motor. So your motor ends right there. You can't put them in those two holes. So you go to the next set, and then they'll go all the way to the back in the first open set of holes that you have vertically there on both sides. So rotate it to the side, clip them in, then rotate to the other side and clip those in. That's what I found. And then your supports, you're gonna put one support from the top, and it's gonna go into the leg opening here, the top, like of the joint. So you'll see the joint where it starts to go. You're gonna put it in that hole there. And then on this other side, we're gonna do the same type of thing. So we're gonna put the top one in, clip that in. And now this is gonna put a little bit of strain on your upper part here. It's gonna kind of pull it back into alignment, and that's okay. With these plastic pieces, there aren't really good hole measured values. You just kind of have to get it close. So again, if you look right here, that hole right at the joint is where I'm gonna insert that into. So again, I might have to pull a little bit to kind of get that, and there it goes, into that spot. And that's now gonna make that pretty rigid. That's not gonna go anywhere. It doesn't move forward and backward, side to side, it's good. You're all set. With wiring, I usually run my cables underneath and then up through the chassis where I can. So I'm gonna use some 200mm wires to bring the motor cables up. I'm gonna put my right motor in port 1. And then my left motor is gonna be in port 6. And then with these, again, 200mm cables, just gonna bring this one down and under. And the reason is I don't want that to kind of be in the way. You can also use some zip ties if you want to cable manage. So you could zip tie this wire to here, or they make some cable clips that you can clip it onto that bar, again, just so it's not, but this is pretty good. It's not a very long wire. Try to use as short of wires as you can. This one's a little bit longer, so this one, again, I would just use a 200mm, but I couldn't find one. So this one's, I think, a 300mm. You can see it's quite a bit longer than the other one. And I'm gonna put this in port 11. And if I were in competition, I would probably zip tie this one so it wouldn't be an issue getting into some places I don't want it to get, or getting tangled into things. But I would just zip tie to this post right here. And you're allowed to add zip ties for cable management. So kind of clean that all up, make it look good. All right, that is the robot fully completed. So now you have an arm, you have a front, so this can go up. Again, you can grab onto the bar and hang in this position, and then you can also grab balls. If this is up a little bit, you can run into the pipe and it acts as like a one-way valve, or hit the edge of the wall to grab a ball. So this is kind of a nice little feature on this. But this spot right here is very similar to what one of our teams created, and they were able to score 50 points on their own in driver skills, and 46 points in autonomous skills with a robot very similar to this. So I think it's a great first build. It's a good build for a team. And then they competed against another, or with another team, and they were able to fully clear the field and score all the balls into the lower scoring goal. So I think that's worth maybe 74. So as a combined total, 2 of these pusher bots were able to clear the entire field and score 74 for the round, and they had time to spare. They probably had 5 or 10 seconds left at the end. So it's a good robot. It can score points. It might even win you a tournament. So there you have it.